Hello, my name is Charlotte Eisentrout, and I'm with EBS, Engineered Business Solutions, LLC. And today's topic is about ego, which nobody is really a super fan of, especially when ego controls you and what it is that you do, and especially in leadership. Anyway, um, as always, like if you enjoy the video, subscribe if you'd like to hear more content, and share if you know of somebody who could greatly benefit from this information. Alright, and let's start. So we're going to talk about like when ego is the enemy in leadership, what happens. And I'm going to be speaking from my own experience as a follower and as a leader. It's 50-50 because I realized that my parents really greatly tipped the scales in terms of being a leader and having that kind of influence. Blah. Like, it sounds so arrogant. Be like, I'm a leader. And that's where ego comes in, right? When people say, I lead by following my followers, that's different. That's not arrogance. That's not ego. So what we're talking about here in particular is when our ego gets in the way. When our ego gets in the way of making real connections, understanding exactly what is going on in a social situation. Ego can really keep you from ultimate goals in life. We are humans. We are connected to each other in a circle, in a hoop that never ends. Anyway, so when ego is the enemy, this includes things like being overly critical to other people and especially subordinates. Like ego is all about, ego in a way is basically that knight in shining armor that defends your boundaries. Think of ego that way. But sometimes ego can be too much, and ego is too much of a knight in shining armor for us. Say, if you were to think of Psyche as being your king or your queen, like that's, I always like talking in metaphors because it kind of helps us understand. I feel like it can help us understand more about our own psychology. So here we are, we're talking about leadership, and ego gets in the way. You know, when we're overly critical to other people without balancing it out with feedback that is very helpful for them, and in that way, you know, giving good feedback by being that serving kind of attitude. Like good leaders are they serve. Good leaders serve their followers. Just like you think of when you know you go to church, right? Church is a really great example of a, a dimension of leadership. Pastors, they have to take care of their flock, right? And because they take care of their flock, the flock comes to them. The flock is drawn to them. You can't be a leader with no followers. That's just taking a walk. That is literally taking a walk. And that is a saying, like somebody else said it, it's whatever, but if people don't want to follow you, then you're basically just taking a walk. And, you know, and then you're a follower to somebody else. In our big wide world, and how complicated everything has gotten with communication and blah blah blah, we are always leading in some way, and we are always following in some way. It just often depends on the moment, literally. Uh, and it can get complicated pretty quickly. So, when ego is the enemy, like things like not being able to take feedback, uh, no matter how small. So, so for instance, if somebody just says like, "Hey, you say you know a lot," and uh, ego is the enemy, when I in turn yell at them, "No, it's not. It's like it's you. It's blame. Blame. Just trying to do the blame game and just like it's never me. I'm perfect, right?" When we're not able to take feedback, that is a sign that ego is seriously holding us down from our true potential as human beings, as leaders, as followers, as being a team. So, when ego is the enemy, you're more likely to move towards betrayal, to move towards betraying other people. I've seen it happen, like, I've seen it happen when your self-esteem is very low and somebody has something that you don't and you're envious of that. That is a part of like that is another type where ego is the enemy, because I don't have that and I want it and you have it. And like, say for instance, it could be friends, it could be business, um it could be your own coworkers, your subs, your leaders, like even like followers betray leaders, leaders betray followers. Happens both ways. And of course between teammates. Like, but when you have low self-esteem and a high ego, this is where this stuff kind of tends to come into play. Luckily, there is solutions. There is solutions to getting better and really being there for your team and succeeding in business and succeeding in your team and succeeding in whatever company it is that you want to be a part of. When ego is the enemy, your interactions with others starts from a negative space or like a negative energy. If you hold on for 1 second, I need to make a little change. See, this kind of helps me talk about ego, because then that way you can't see my. It makes it easier to wear a mask. So, ego, in many ways, is about kind of wearing masks, right? Like, maybe if I'm good enough or smart enough, then they'll love me. Then they'll like me. Gotta be perfect. Got that shit. Okay, so when your interaction starts from a negative space because you are so concerned with covering and protecting your ego, then your teammates even no longer want to follow you. So if you're always, being super critical or only giving negative feedback, only coming from a negative space, unless those people grew up in that environment, you're not going to attract the right people. Like, you attract the energies that you attract, you have. So if I come from a negative space, I can attract people who are also from a negative space. This is part of the hiring process, right? Like, this is where it is that you can choose literally what your culture looks like in your company. So followers no longer want to follow you unless they're used to being in a certain kind of environment or a certain level of negativity. Otherwise, you're gonna have a very negative culture, negative company. Because if you're scaring away the good people and only keeping the ones who continue the negativity, you end up having a culture of negativity in your business, and it shows in how it is that you market, you sell, and you talk to customers. Number 6, leaders, followers, teammates are more likely to self-sabotage the relationship with the others. So, self-sabotage. What an interesting word. I've heard of people who don't like the word, and I've heard of people who like the word, and I've heard of ways to, like, different terms for it, sort of like betraying the relationship, hurting a relationship that you have with a leader or follower or a subordinate. And by self-sabotaging, it's basically kind of saying or trying to say that the relationship is over, or it could be just a very long stream of just very bad choices. That's the best way to describe it. Very bad choices. If you're somebody who has very low self-esteem, and I speak again also as somebody who has been there as being a part of just, you know, having low self-esteem, and ego is the enemy. Oh, by the way, I have read this book, which is really good. It's by Ryan Holiday, and you can understand a lot more about that. My own personal experience has been dealing in business, dealing with my parents, dealing with my friends, observing how other people do business, either that I know or through television or knowledge, books, magazines. Teamwork is, so I have a little sister that I raised. I love dogs. I love training dogs. I really like talking to people. So, and it's just been this, like, all my life, I've learned to be very, very observational of people. And so I'm speaking from followership and leadership in all these different areas that I've also experienced firsthand or seen other people experience. So that sort of gives you an idea about where I am. So self-sabotage the relationship, trying to break it, trying to, in particular, especially in business, it would be trying to, like, halt production. People don't, it's not as efficient. People are under high stress, or causing high stress towards other people, either purposefully or not. Like, as in terms of levels of psychology, say you can consciously cause chaos and anxiety and stress and frustration, or you can subconsciously do it as well without knowing that you're doing it. It does happen. Both do happen. And it's okay. I've been there. Like, when I'm speaking into this stuff, it's like, I'm also speaking into it as I understand. And if you're currently experiencing these things, there is a solution. And often it starts with mentorship. We also have some upcoming courses, and we do one-on-one consulting. So check us out, ebsarizona.com. Number 7, leader is more likely not to seek help when it's needed, either from followers, because sometimes or like your subordinates, but you people treat each other a certain way. Anyway, your subordinates or your followers or your teammates, if you're coming from a high, like, ego is the enemy kind of thing, you're less likely to seek out help from people who can really help you. Or even, again, sort of self-sabotaging of, like, oh, I know that Christy would be the most amount of help. but I think it would be better if I talked to Bob, you know, or something like that. But because when ego is the enemy, you keeping yourself from doing correct action so that you can be the best leader that you can be. Number 8, entitlement. When ego is the enemy, sometimes we feel entitled to things that you weren't supposed to belong to us, or we haven't done the correct kind of things for. Entitlement is a funny word. Entitlement, control, paranoia. So higher levels of paranoia when you have when ego is the enemy, and really trying to control things that you can't, or that, you know, trying to overdo your boundaries into other people and trying to control them too much, right? So this is where the that kind of ego is the enemy comes in. Entitlement, like I deserve things without actually giving you reason for them, or I didn't do the work for them, like entitlement. I don't know. Entitlement's an iffy word. It's a positive or negative. Anyway, depends on how you look at it. Okay, dreamscapes. So when ego is the enemy, I feel like a lot of the times there's dreaming. Like dreaming as a goal is really good, but dreaming as right here, right now, I'm doing this and you're not. Or I am this and you're not. That is where dreamscapes come in. So it's all talk and no action, which is number 10. So dreamscapes is just pretty much just exactly that. All talk, no action. Like because it's all in here. It's all in your brain when you're in dreamscapes, and when ego is the enemy. It's all talk, no action, and you get to a point where you find yourself curious and offended even that your reality doesn't match what it is that you thought in your head. Ego is the enemy when your dreams, what you thought was reality, doesn't actually match what is happening right now, or where it is that you are right now, or how it is that you feel right now. Like I could dreamscape all I want that every day I wake up happy, but whether or not that's true is something completely different, because reality is different than what's going on in my head. And ego is in your head, right? It's all in your head. People say it's all in your head, and yeah, they're right. It is all in your head. Psychology is complicated. We have a big gray mass of whatever up there, and yet it's huge and complicated, and it causes us to have emotions and reactions and logical thinking. So, yeah. All talk, no action. You know what that gets me? You know what all talk, no action? That gets me with people who think that I'm lying. Or it ruins my reputation. It can ruin my reputation. I mean, you can sell people though on Dreamscapes. You can definitely sell Dreamscapes. But do you get real results from just dreaming all day and not taking action? No. I had to learn that the hard way. I'm a goddamn perfectionist. Recovering, I like to say. Oh my gosh, okay. I'm a perfectionist. See, even that. And I used to dreamscape all the time. Like, it was my favorite place to be. Fantasyland. It's the best way to describe it, is Fantasyland. But when you dreamscape, you're not making business. You're not making change. You don't have a purpose. Or you wonder what your purpose is even. It's like, and that's where it is you get deep down. Anyway, purposes are good to have. But if you're, yeah. Okay, so 11, only giving negative feedback. I'm pretty sure I already talked about that. Like, coming from a negative space, only giving negative feedback. That is where ego is the enemy. So, Number 12, only giving criticisms that are from an ego-absorbed space and are not in the best interest of the subordinate, aka being negative just to be negative. I've been in this space. I've woken up every day in a negative space. And it came from a hurting place. It came from hurt, from pain, and most often it all derives from our childhood. Just to make things fun and interesting, put it that way. Like, nobody wants to talk about their childhood. That's because all of our beliefs come from our childhood. But anyway, I could talk about that another day, about transformation. Transformation is fun, to say the least, I guess. It's kind of fun. It's like a journey. Transformation is like a journey. Ambushing. When ego is the enemy, ambushing feels so good. And it hurts so bad when other people do that to you. Ambushing. So ambushing is like, all of a sudden, you know, all this negativity all of a sudden, and like, you're fired, you know, and, you know, you did this when at first it was okay, and then now it's the reason why you're getting fired, right? Ambushing could even be, I told you this report was due Friday, and, you know, and just like harassing somebody about that, while the person was saying, hey, you know what, you told me originally it was on Monday, or something like that, right? Like, ambushing is like harassing in order to incite a reaction. Ambushing, like a negative, hopefully negative reaction. Most people like negative reaction. Anyway, but I can teach you how to stay on top of it. Yay! Number 14, anger. When ego is the enemy, anger is more likely to take control. One of the things about anger that very few people know or understand or are taught about is that anger is the cover emotion for pain and sadness. So if you're really angry, it's probably because there's pain in your history. And how it is that we act towards others in the present, whether or not we want to admit out loud, like, our beliefs can often still be in the past. And so it's changing that beliefs that can make a kind of transition. And I have several ways that I've changed my own fundamental beliefs, and I can teach you how to change yours so that then you come from a place of abundance and not scarcity, and come from a place where ego is not the enemy. And that's something that, you know, really helps out really top-notch leaders, is not letting things hurt them. I have a dog sleeping. She likes to snore. Anyway, so anger is more likely to take control. Anger, so aka coming from a place of hurt, past hurt, anger is more likely to take control because you've been betrayed in the past and your ego is hurt due to somebody overstepping their boundaries, essentially. Number 15, not seeking out mentorship. And so when ego is the enemy and we think, like, we have this big cover, this shield, ego is a part of that shield. It's like a mask that we wear. When we think, when we put out to the world, I'm perfectly fine as I am. In all ways. In fact, I am perfect. I am perfect. People hate that, first of all. No, but not seeking out mentorship. Like, you're going to tell me that you're so good that you never have to improve. Is that like that's kind of what perfectionism says. And perfectionism often comes from a place where ego is the enemy. But so not seeking out mentorship. You know what? You can be the best leader this world has ever seen, but you will constantly require the opinion or idea or help from others, so that then you can make a much more objective, strategic, right choice socially, so that then you can continue to succeed or have more success. Um, Another ego is the enemy is not being open to mentorship. I mean, I'm also constantly improving. You know, I'm not a perfect person by any means. No, 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 no. But you have to keep improving. Like, I know that right now, what I need to improve on is followership and teamwork. At this moment in my life, those are the things that I am working on. I know leadership. I've done leadership. I've mastered leadership legitimately. I've done my lion's share of more than, 10,000 hours of my life of observing and strategically seeing what works and what doesn't in leadership, teamwork, and followership. Followership is definitely something that I need to work on. So, and I'm working on it. And I noticed that the more that I work on being a good follower, the more that I'm a good leader, because it expands. It's not just this one little thing. Leadership is not like just this. Like, leadership is not you come home and you go to work and you're a leader, and then you come home, you're a follower. It doesn't always work like that. Leadership is complicated. Followership is complicated. Teamwork is complicated. What works and what doesn't are two different things. But it's not black and white. That's the problem. There's a lot of gray area. But I definitely know that when I wear ego, when I have a lot of ego, when ego is the enemy, when there's just so much ego, it's like you're putting on jewelry, you're putting on stuff, and you think it's gonna make you look better, but really it doesn't. It's just heavy, and it gets in the way, and after a while it just doesn't make sense anymore, and when you overdo it. Ego is that overdoing. Ego is that overreaction. Ego is that I'm going to fight so much that it's no longer in my boundary. But when you take off that shield, when you take off that all the BS that's already going on in your mind anyway, and you release yourself from the guilt and shame of your past, and you learn about your past, and you strategically maneuver forward with people who can help you, there's nothing that can stop you. Be a bulldozer in life. Be a bulldozer in business. Not like be a leader in business. Like, by bulldozer, I don't mean overwhelm and overcome like that. Being a bulldozer, that's actually ego is the enemy, right? When you're a bulldozer, when you have a conversation with someone and you come from a ego is the enemy place, and you're asking questions, but then you keep you or like somebody else keeps interrupting, that's bulldozing a conversation. That's not a good, that's ego is the enemy kind of stuff. Do not do that. Be a leader. So leadership is followership. Leadership is being different. Leadership is taking initiative, and you can do it. And I can help. ebsarizona.com. We help you succeed with your team. And check out ebsarizona.com for more information about our services, because we would love to help you. I mean, like, if you're struggling with leadership, I've been there. I understand. I understand what it's like to make mistakes. I understand what it's like to not be perfect. I understand what it's like to lead a team in name only, or to lead a team who doesn't like you, or whatever, or to be a follower as a part of a team who didn't like someone, or just as a follower observing what works and what doesn't. Anyway, as always, like if you enjoy the video, share if you so like if you enjoy the video, share if you know of someone who could really benefit from this information, and subscribe if you'd like to hear more amazing content. I will talk to you later, and in the meantime, don't let your ego get the better of you. Peace.